for me, I didn't get all the student loan debt. A lot of us didn't get the student loan debt, right? What things could we have learned? What things could our parents have done to kind of help us understand, the correct path that we should have gone?
Well, see, I think this is a tough subject here because it really depends, right? It depends because one thing is where did your parents go to school? If you're a first generation student, right? And so that means your parents either didn't go to college or they didn't finish, or sometimes, like in our cases, our parents went to school. My dad studied in India and in Nigeria. And so before he came to the US, he already had he was on track to be a civil engineer. Well, in the 80s, there were some laws that basically prohibited foreigners from using their academics in the United States. That's changed quite a bit, though. And so there's a difference there. And so oftentimes we as students, we don't know that. We just think, oh man, my parents, they don't know, they just on my back. But we also don't realize like the bigger play that's happening, right? And the bigger societal play, sometimes we don't take that into consideration. So to your point, I think finding the right educational fit is what really matters, right? And that's going to save us a lot of money. And the right educational fit now is changing drastically, right? Because you have to think back when kind of our parents were in school, there wasn't even the internet, right? So now you got online classes, right? So that provides a lot of options for students now. Because a lot of online classes, excuse me, if you don't have to physically be there, then that means I can serial task. I could get my work done, and then I could go focus on something that makes me money, right? So there's a lot of different components to that. But let me kind of hop on like the things that we know. That's like, if you're trying to save money on the college going process or the education process, here's a couple nuggets that are golden. They're true, period, regardless of institution, whatever. The number one thing that increases student loan debt is people not filling out the FAFSA. So they're not having access to a certain amount of scholarships, right? Because what happens is, and I know this because I got about 87,000 worth of scholarships and grants, is that the schools utilize the FAFSA and the expected family contribution to determine the scholarship allotment, because schools have what's called endowments. And that is alumni money and investments that they made in the past that give them a certain amount of scholarships that they can offer to students. So for me, just one such scholarship was a president's scholarship. It was a transfer scholarship that I got from going from community college to Ford University. It was $10,000. All I literally had to do was go to the university, and I was going to save $10,000 a year, right? And so when you're going to, I went to pretty fancy private school. I guess, I don't know how fancy it was, but I went to a private school, right? And the thing is, when I got there, it was $36,000 a year tuition. Well, that cut off 1/3 of the tuition off top, right? And so these are some different types of things that we have to look at. The next thing we have to look at, besides filling out the FAFSA, right, is changing our major. Changing your major, because if you do it, especially if you do it in your junior year and whatnot, that ends up biting people in the bottom, because when you change your major, certain credits no longer count towards graduation. So this is what I would say: if you're undecided, just get what they call a multidisciplinary degree or a general studies degree. Why even look that way? Why does that matter? Why does that make sense? Because the thing is, when people graduate from college, 50% don't even work in the field that they got the degree in. So if you get a general studies degree, that means it covered pretty much all the basics. Sometimes they require a few more credit hours than a typical degree. And then there you go, you're good to go, right? Instead of studying underwater basket weaving, that's not going to necessarily lead to a career. So that's the second thing. So we got one is filling out the FAFSA. Two, changing your major. The third thing is actually changing colleges, changing universities, right? So again, some people, college is not for them, and I'm going to hop on that in a second, right? But changing places without graduating is actually what shoots people a lot in the foot. You'd be better off going to community college, finishing your 2 years, 3 years at community college, and then going to another location, but at least that's finishing out the way. Why? Because number one, it's going to give you access to more scholarships and resources. Number two, you've already gotten that out the way. Now, if something happens, for whatever reason, God forbid, you can't graduate, you have something to fall back on rather than, you're not able to fall back on that. So let me hop on this kind of what if college isn't for me thing, right? There's certifications, right? And this is, this was in my mind back in the day, right? I didn't know that going to college didn't necessarily mean you had to get a degree. You could actually get certifications. And so it depends on what the field is, right? You could get certified in some kind of technical program. So you could be ASC certified mechanic. You could be a certified welder. You could be a certified, now they got on the construction sites where you put together the scaffolding. You can get certified for that. That pays $30 an hour, $20 to $30 an hour, just for putting together the scaffolding. So there's so many certifications that are out there that are options for students that can help save that money so they can keep that money.
That's wonderful. There's a couple of notes that I had was shout out to HCC. Shout out to HCC. For me, I know that was a really big turning point for me when I started going to HCC. For those of you who don't know, HCC is Houston Community College. It's a local school here. It's been around for, I don't know how, for forever. And I was HD, I couldn't really figure it out. And so I'll never forget, I was actually borrowing your car. I was borrowing Ashley. Really? I was borrowing Ashley, and I drove to UHD. I had to finalize some paperwork because I was leaving UHD and coming to Houston Community College. And I remember it vividly because it was hot, but you had to keep the heater on so the car wouldn't over.
Oh, man.
And so I ran into the school looking like, people were like, my shirt was off, and I was like, I need to get to the financial aid office. I get to the financial aid office, I do whatever I need to, and I get to HCC. I love HCC because HCC helped me figure it out. It just helped me hone in. And I think the biggest thing I realized was I had a sociology professor who I loved. It was an awesome class. And I looked at her syllabus, and on the syllabus, it had her HCC email, but she also had a St. Thomas email and a U of H email. And I was like, this woman is teaching at U of H and St. Thomas and here. So I'm getting the same education that people at U of H are getting and people at St. Thomas. And and I didn't have financial aid when I was at H. I paid for everything out of pocket. Yeah. And I was like, dude, I work overnight at Walmart. I'm a stalker. I'm like, this is awesome. I can just pay for this awesome education. I love the teacher. I love the professor. So, you were going to say something.
No, I think what you're saying is spot on. Is that because again, the game done changed. We used to think the best professor, the best degree, whatever, it's out there and it's unattainable. And the reality is, especially depending on where you live, right? We live in what's called a commuter city, right? So typically, to go to college in a city like Houston, you have a couple of options. You have TSU, you have Prairie View, you have St. Thomas, you have Rice, you have U of H. And so because you have these different options that are available to you, you can pretty much drive to any one of those options. Well, guess what? There's only so many people with PhDs in history, in literature. So those same professors end up teaching at multiple campuses. And so now you have access to that high quality professor from Rice, from St. Thomas, from U of H, at a local school. So that's why I'm a fan of HCC. And I say this, I'm actually on the board of the foundation at HCC. We help raise money for scholarships for students. And so I'm not trying to tell you, hey, you have to go to HCC or anything like that. Just put that little disclaimer in there. But I understand how it works, right? Yeah. And so by understanding how it works, I can say, oh man, you're spot on. Usually people who are professors at the local university, they're actually practitioners too. So that means they're not just doing it for academic sense. That means they have some kind of background in it. And that's really helpful too, because that helps you into the workforce.
Absolutely.